Iran has let slip its entire plan of action while Israel and the United States prepare for the next phase of pressure in the Middle East.
The war must also be ready. Right here in Lebanon, there was a night when we told them it was a ceasefire at that time, not the end of the war. We asked why you are not respecting it. Apparently, you should be respecting it. It wasn't the first time that during the ceasefire we launched missiles from our own territory against the Zionist regime of Israel to defend Lebanon. So look, if necessary, we will do this through war and fire as well. I said that if they respond, we will certainly respond again. While we do this, we will certainly demand that they fulfill the agreement. Why shouldn't we demand it? And you saw on the trip we took there, if you look, the number of fires, clashes, and martyrs was declining across the board. In the last 3 or 4 days,
the message was practically delivered in public by Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, one of the main figures of the Iranian regime. By admitting that Tehran negotiates with Washington without treating the Americans as friends, he talks about war if the agreement is not fulfilled, threatens oil, takes a hard line in the Strait of Hormuz, and still tries to exploit supposed divisions within the Trump administration. At the same time, Benjamin Netanyahu stepped up his rhetoric and said that Israel entered Iran twice to prevent its own destruction, making it clear that there could be a third action if necessary.
The Druze saved us from the massacre, and then we had to enter Iran twice to save ourselves from extermination by atomic bombs that were already in their hands. And who knows who would be here now? Will there be a third time, if necessary? As Prime Minister, I will not allow Iran to have nuclear weapons. That's enough.
J.D. Vance also became central to the crisis and emphasized that the United States wants lasting, verifiable commitments supported by inspections for Iran's denuclearization.
And I don't know when this will air, probably tomorrow. Tomorrow, right? So I think what the president said was, let's let this happen. There are a few things we want. We want lasting commitments that are verifiable and backed by inspections to verify that Iran will denuclearize its entire country, right? Let's see.
The technical talks between the United States and Iran remain at the center of the deadlock, even as Tehran tries to deny or confuse the scope of these negotiations. Israel has shown that it does not intend to wait for the threat to grow. Washington tries to use diplomacy without giving up force. What did Tehran reveal? Why has Hormuz become a threat? How will Trump and Netanyahu respond? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of direct and straightforward content, consider subscribing because we have videos like this every day. Ghalibaf summed up the crisis in a simple sentence. Iran negotiates but prepares for war. That was the most serious message. The president of the Iranian parliament described the United States as a treacherous enemy.
By the way, one of the criticisms made about this issue was that precisely because of these conditions the regime is imposing in Lebanon, their main complaint was exactly your trip to Zurich. And they even said that even now the regime is not respecting the ceasefire. With the number of martyrs Lebanon has already suffered, going to Zurich basically was not the right thing to do, as you just explained now.
to be respected, that's the truth. Look, I've said many, many times that we really need to pay close attention to this. Negotiation is indeed a fundamental method of struggle. In other words, even now that we are negotiating with the United States, we are not negotiating with a friend but with an enemy who does not keep their word and who, whenever they have the opportunity, will certainly act against us. In fact, only those who are prepared for war can negotiate well. One must also be ready for war. Right here in Lebanon, there was a night when we told them it was a ceasefire at that time, not the end of the war. We asked why you are not respecting it. Apparently, you should be respecting it. It wasn't the first time that during the ceasefire, we launched missiles from our own territory against the Zionist regime of Israel to defend Lebanon. So look, if necessary, we will do this with war and with fire as well. I said that if they respond, we will certainly respond again. While we do this, we will certainly demand that they fulfill the agreement. Why shouldn't we demand it?
The statement shows how Iran tries to use the negotiating table as a political shield while keeping the military threat as a tool of pressure. The most sensitive point is oil. Ghalibaf stated that Iran resumed exports after the effective suspension of the blockade and said that more than 40 million barrels had been shipped in about 10 or 12 days. He also stated that, before that, Tehran went 50 or 60 days without exporting a single barrel, completely blocked by the pressure.
Now, speaking about the oil sector, let's see what situation it is in and what stage it is at now.
Now, look, among the important topics you mentioned is precisely this issue of the oil sector. Well, when the sanctions began, the first sanction we faced was on our oil. Our central bank was sanctioned, the oil was sanctioned, the petrochemical companies were sanctioned, and many other things as well. Well, now it's been 15, almost 20 years that we've been living under these sanctions. Across all the many back and forth visits during the nuclear deal process, this was actually the first time. How many times did they say that this was just an empty promise? And just an empty promise. Look, we're not saying it's not an empty promise, but anyway, now look, this empty promise on Monday last week. Wait, no, we went there on Sunday. On Monday last week, on the OFAC website, the Treasury of Zilpa, this waiver, or as we in the scrap sector call it, means authorization to export oil and derivatives and the unblocking of the central bank. In other words, everything that is necessary for the sale of oil, petrochemicals, and their derivatives to happen. In other words, you need banking operations, the central bank has to be involved, you need insurance, you need transportation. All of that was allowed. In other words, before, because of the sanctions, our oil was under restrictions. Of course, we thank China here, not that we sold only to China. Actually, our most important customer was China, which bought our oil. But naturally, we sold this oil at a lower price. Today, the price of our oil tracks Brent on the international market. We receive the same amount.
The payment is also made in cash?
Yes, later, through the bank. Before, it was in the hands of the muggles, settling accounts, corruption. Actually, that alone was a problem, how this money would come. Then where would this money stay? We had limitations. We couldn't buy just any goods with this money. Now it's been released. Now, I don't understand why some insist on saying that's not the case. They say we ended OFAC, but we didn't. What kind of talk is that? It's not possible for the United States to do that because the United States has shown that we don't trust them. At any moment they can do that. We have an answer for that. We do exactly the same thing. Actually, that's the art of negotiation. Now, this discussion was fully carried out in Article 10, and we also anticipated the duration of our negotiations for these 14 items to be 60 days. Of course, with the agreement of both parties, it can be extended. Let me say this now so that tomorrow no one says otherwise. This process of renewal every 60 days, if it continues, will be extended until the negotiations reach a final result. And that the removal of all primary and secondary sanctions, currency sanctions, with your permission in any way.
In the Board of Governors and Security Council.
Security Council, Board of Governors, and the U.S. sanctions themselves, whether from Congress or by executive orders from the President. If all of these are not removed every 60 days, this must be extended. And that's the procedure. When all of them are removed, this one will also be removed. It's also possible, after all, the United States is not trustworthy. Come fight here in 3 weeks. I tweeted that too. Turn so we can turn. If it's a fight you want, we'll fight. If you want to deprive us of oil, no one here will benefit from oil. If we cannot export oil from the Persian Gulf and the United States wants to pressure us, we will not allow them and their allies to export oil while we cannot. We understand that very well there.
This statement exposes why the regime is so aggressive. The Iranian economy needed to breathe, and now it tries to turn every barrel sold into a political victory. The agreement under discussion provides for a 60-day window for free passage of commercial ships, but it does not definitively resolve who will control the future conditions of the route. Recent reports indicate that American negotiators discuss mechanisms to keep Hormuz open. Meanwhile, Iran insists on treating the region as a tool of strategic pressure. That's where Ghalibaf's statement reveals the Iranian plan: sell oil, buy time, keep Hormuz under threat, and try to gain an advantage before the pressure returns. When he says that Iran will not give up its rights in the strait, he's sending a message to the market, to Washington, to Israel, and to the Gulf nations. J.D. Vance responded on another line. The American vice president stated that technical negotiations exist, even when Iran publicly denies peace talks. According to him, this denial is part of a rhetorical tactic used by Tehran to confuse the political environment. Vance's position helps to understand Washington's strategy: maintain technical contact, demand verifiable commitments, and make it clear that no benefits will be given if the Iranian regime does not change its behavior. Vance's strongest statement came when he said that Trump is willing to use military force, but only if it serves a clear objective.
They were losing the political argument due to world energy markets. So, what did the President of the United States do about critics calling for more bombs? Yeah, their attitude is just to drop bombs and drop bombs and drop bombs, and they can't really articulate to what end. And what is the President going to do? Nothing. He's going to do nothing. He's going to do nothing. He's not going to do anything. He's going to do it, and he made it clear that he's willing to drop bombs. Bombs, but only if it serves a purpose. So what he's doing now is absorbing a lot of pressure.
The American goal is simple: lasting commitments, verifiable, and backed by inspections. Iran tries to exploit an alleged divergence within the United States. Ghalibaf mentioned Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance as if each followed a different approach.
And this divergence exists even within the United States itself. Now look, Rubio is following in one way and Vance is following in another way. What did Rubio do on Thursday when he was in Bahrain in the Persian Gulf region? What actions did he take? All of this goes against the actions of the Memorandum of Understanding and the Persian Gulf countries. And once again, they really put them on alert, inciting them against the strait, against us. Well, they are our enemies. We have a Memorandum of Understanding and we stand firm on it. That same Rubio is there, precisely continuing the Washington Memorandum of Understanding, where they want to follow that Abraham plan and normalize Lebanon's relations with the Zionist regime. But our Memorandum of Understanding is exactly preserving Lebanon's independence in that place where so many people end up tragically losing their lives. There are many Muslims, there are several Shiites, there are many Sunnis, and there are also many Christians. All kinds of religions and ethnicities are there, and the Zionist regime is actually taking their lives and committing crimes. So because of that, we definitely need to go and have a dialogue. We should definitely follow this Memorandum of Understanding, which is a document we are proud of.
This attempt is political. Tehran wants to show its domestic audience that Washington appears divided and that the Islamic Republic could play on these differences. But the core line of the Trump administration remains based on pressure, technical negotiation, and the threat of retaliation if the regime moves beyond what was agreed. Netanyahu entered this crisis speaking as the leader of a nation that does not accept waiting for the enemy to grow stronger. He stated that Israel has already entered Iran twice to save itself from destruction and that there will be a third time if necessary.
The Druze saved us from the massacre, and later we had to enter Iran twice to save ourselves from extermination by atomic bombs that were already in their hands. And who knows who would be here now? Will there be a third time, if necessary? Iran will not have nuclear weapons while I am Prime Minister. That's enough.
Israel also looks at Gaza within this same security framework. Netanyahu once again referred to the so-called voluntary migration out of Gaza as an option. a proposal discussed by Israeli authorities to allow Palestinians to leave the Strip through organized means, according to reports from the Israeli press. The topic is explosive, but within Netanyahu's logic it appears connected to the idea of reducing Hamas's control and to redesign security around Israel. In Lebanon, the conflict has also gained a new element. Vance stated that Lebanon and Israel are having direct talks at a level that hasn't happened in several months.
You know, Lebanon and Israel are talking directly in a way that hasn't happened in several months. Both are in a way largely aligned, and you could even argue that both, if you harmonize the peace agreement between Lebanon and Israel with the memorandum of understanding signed between the United States and Iran, what both documents fundamentally say is that Lebanon's territorial integrity will be respected, right? Things have definitely changed. I think the question is whether this change is lasting. And me?
The American view is that any agreement involving Lebanon and Israel needs to be discussed within the broader understanding between Washington and Tehran. Because Hezbollah continues to be the Iranian arm that puts pressure on Israel's northern border. The agreement regarding Lebanon is still fragile. Recent reports indicate that the Lebanese government has agreed to deploy troops along the southern border within a framework of understanding with Israel. Meanwhile, Israel's main demand remains the disarmament of Hezbollah before any broader withdrawal. That's why Galibaf complained that the Lebanese army was being put at the service of what he called the Zionist regime.
At the same time, 48 hours ago, after 4 or 5 rounds of negotiations between Lebanon and the Zionist regime in Washington, they talked there. There, they also reached a conclusion made up of 14 points. Now, the people of Lebanon do not accept this conclusion. It is against the Constitution of Lebanon. In fact, in a way, Israel is officially returning to Lebanon again. And now even the Lebanese army is being put at the service of the Zionist regime to guarantee the security of the Zionist regime. This is the agreement now. But the agreement that Iran made with the United States is that, in fact, Lebanon itself should do this. Well, we are in a battle with the Zionist regime.
The statement shows Iran's discomfort with any rearrangement that takes away Hezbollah's freedom to pressure Israel. For Tehran, losing ground in Lebanon means losing a strategic asset. For Israel, pushing Hezbollah back means protecting its border and reducing the Iranian encirclement. Vance's remarks about China and artificial intelligence also fit into this broader context. He stated that part of Xi Jinping's inner circle wants to dominate the artificial intelligence race, while another part fears the consequences of that victory.
Losing the AI race to China is also an interesting issue, he said about Xi Jinping. China's own AI policy is fundamentally derived from ours. And I'm not just talking about them copying American models. That's part of it. Actually, I'm not sure. I don't think many Americans have a good understanding of how the Chinese really think about AI. I think there's a part of China's policy establishment, Xi's inner circle, that probably just wants to dominate the AI arms race. Yeah. Actually, I think there's a part of Xi's inner circle that says we don't want to lose to the United States, but we also don't want to win. What I mean is that I think they're a little scared of that.
The connection with Iran lies in this view of power. Washington sees the global competition as a combination of technology, energy, military strength, and political influence. Iran operates in Hormuz and Lebanon. China competes in artificial intelligence. Israel responds in the field of security. Trump tries to build pressure and agreements without appearing weak. Galibaf also tried to dismantle Trump's statement about the use of money released to Iran. When asked about the claim that these funds could only be used to buy grain from American farmers, he replied that this would be completely inaccurate. It was recently discussed whether the American president restricted this money only to buy grain from American farmers. Is that correct, Doctor?
Absolutely nothing.
The dispute reveals another sensitive point. Washington sells the idea of control over the resources, while Tehran tries to tell its public that it has not accepted American tutelage. The problem for Iran is that each explanation opens up another crack. Iran tries to use each front as a bargaining chip. Israel tries to neutralize each threat before it turns into a bigger attack.
If I told you exactly on the fateful day of October 7 that today we would be living in a situation where we eliminated Deif, Sinwar, Haniyeh, and Nasrallah, along with practically the entire leadership of Hezbollah and a large part of its vast missile arsenal, that we control almost 70% of Gaza's territory, that we have security zones inside Lebanon, security zones inside Syria, and of course a security zone inside Gaza, that we broke the barrier of fear. For 47 years, no one dared to attack Iran militarily. And not only did we do that, but we hit them twice. We eliminated a direct existential threat. Do you want more?
No, I want to know if it's over, if it's behind us.
Look,
Never.
that we continue. Never this. And victory.
Total remains the goal.
Let me tell you something. It never ends. You want to live in the Middle East and in the world, you have to be very strong. We are very strong. Israel is stronger than ever, and we push back, we suppress these threats. We have weakened them a lot. We still have work to do, but I'm telling you, handling the remnants of the Iranian axis and seizing opportunities.
The progress of technical talks doesn't lessen the alert. On the contrary, it increases the demand for clarity. If they try to use the agreement as a pause to reorganize forces, Israel has already warned that it will not stand still. And Washington tries to make it clear that diplomacy without results will not be a blank check. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. Support our project and contribute financially through the Pix key that appears on your screen. We are an independent channel focused on keeping you informed with the truth. Your contribution helps us keep going.